Okay, well, first of all, welcome everyone. I do want to start off with saying we would like to acknowledge that we are located on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Thank you so much for being here on a Monday morning. First thing, we're really excited to bring this webinar to you. So I'm Natasha with the Restaurant Association of Nova Scotia. And today's webinar is People and Profit. Control labor costs while investing in your team. And what we're going to be focusing on today is how to manage labor costs in this very swiftly changing restaurant industry that we have here in Nova Scotia. We do know we have a minimum wage increase coming as of October 1st, so we thought this would be a timely webinar to bring forward. We're very excited. We have Jenny Companion with us from the 15 group today. And the 15 group is one of North America's leading hospitality consultancies. Jenny will go in a little bit more. Oh, if you look on the screen, there it is. They do have offices in Toronto, Vancouver, over 30 industry experts who cover all aspects of restaurant operations. And that stems from developing new restaurant concepts to improving the profitability of existing restaurants. So we're really, really excited to have them join us today. And I think what I'll do is stop talking, Jenny, and I'll hand it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, even though it's a little earlier here in Toronto, but it's a beautiful day. So thanks for joining us, everyone. So just to elaborate on the 15 group, just to give you some insight on who we are and why we call ourselves the experts. The company's been around for 24 years now. It was founded by David Hopkins back in 2001. And he comes from extensive restaurant experience, but mostly his background was on the financial side. And he started the business based on the foundation of making restaurants more profitable. We've expanded over the years and across the country, and actually we have consultants on the East Coast, right across to Vancouver. And we have really expanded our business to cover and support restaurants in so many ways. So we have financial experts who really work on financial reporting for businesses and giving them good information. We have chefs on our team, both on the East or in Toronto and Vancouver, that can work with clients on managing their menus, helping to improve them, looking at costs, or creating new ideas. We also have an operations team that focus not solely, but primarily on restaurant profitability. So working with existing restaurants to help them find opportunities to improve their business, another set of eyes to help look at the business from a different angle, or implement systems and tools that can help them make more money. We also help develop new concepts. So we have a brand and concept team, and we can help people from scratch create a new concept or rebrand and relaunch an existing business to freshen it up and hit the market in a new way. To date, we've worked with over 1,200 restaurants. We believe it's actually approaching 1,400 in all shapes and sizes. So everything from food trucks and catering spaces up to full-scale operations within a hotel. Again, we've started from scratch in some of these environments or helped work with them on their books and bookkeeping. Most notably on the East Coast, we helped do the redevelopment and launch of Lionhead in Halifax, and helped launch the great new restaurant Namatak in Happy Valley Tuesday. So very proud of those specific locations. So why we're here today. So you, like 3 other provinces, this week we'll be seeing a minimum wage increase. And we know that for Nova Scotia, that impact is even more so. It's the largest minimum wage increase in the history of the province. So it comes with some challenge. And we know that, even with these minimum wage increases, labor has always been one of those areas that really restaurants can struggle with, and understanding how to manage it. So we say, just because the minimum wage is increasing, it doesn't mean you need to cut your staff. You would say, well, I feel like I do. And we would say, no, you need to learn how to manage it. With high turnover and moving the labor force, we know it can be challenging. It's challenging to find committed staff. It's challenging to find people that want to stay for a long time. But what we really believe is 2 things. If you're managing your labor and you understand what it costs your business, and we'll get into what I mean by what it costs your business and digging into that, if you're really getting into that and understanding how to manage it and those costs, and then you're working really hard with your team to train them and retain them, it can go a long way in helping to keep that expense lower and the cost of retraining higher lower as well. So we get into talking about how people are managing their labor, and often we talk about the old way. The old way is typically the easiest way. It's, you know, what businesses get comfortable doing. It's the same way they've written schedules for years. And they don't necessarily understand how to make adjustments and make changes as the business changes. Examples of the old way, yes, pen and paper. And you may say, I haven't used pen and paper for 10 years. Doesn't mean that we're not managing labor the right way. Or you may say, I've got great labor, I'm not as nervous, but I still use pen and paper. The reality is that there's ways to look at our business that are really more dug into the financials of how we understand what's happening. So restaurants using manual schedules, pen and paper, you know, this can be a challenge with getting a good glimpse of your business. What does your cost of sales look like in relation to labor? You know, spreadsheets are still in place. Maybe there is formulas, maybe there isn't, but are we just using it to print a schedule? Often what we're finding is we're lacking measurement. And what we need to do is start getting a line of sight on our operational efficiencies and our potential cost challenges. And we'll talk about some ways to look at that. And you may say, I haven't used an Excel spreadsheet and a pen and paper in a long time. What we often find is that people are also using the new software the wrong way. That systems like 7Shifts, Push, Amigo often are used as a communication tool and not used to analyze analytics, what they have the full capability of doing. So you would say, where do I start? Well, when we encounter restaurants that are challenged with labor or they're trying to combat these increases like what's happening this week, we often go back to the basics of financials. Financials and financial reporting within the restaurant is really what gives you the best insight on how your business is operating. And financials can be as simple as looking at your daily sales, even an Excel spreadsheet, and comparing the cost of your hours to those sales. As a percentage, are you hitting the targets you want? Are you understanding what the day by day looks like or the week as a whole? And really digging in and getting a good sense of what is your raw labor costing you, and are there opportunities day over day to make changes? We would also say, what are you doing with your P&Ls? Do you have P&Ls? Are you looking at good reports that give you a sense of what your labor costs are as a category in comparison to gross sales? Are you looking at other operational expenses? And then are you budgeting for those expenses and giving yourself a target to work for? Those are a lot of really complicated things sometimes, and restaurants say, I don't have those. If this is something that you haven't dug into or you want some further insight on it, we have done a webinar around budgets and financial reporting. If you use that QR code there, it'll take you to some insights that we have on the importance of proper reporting. And even if it's insights for you to extract some of that information out of your daily sales and put it into a spreadsheet just to give you some insights on how you're performing, it's a great starting place. There's other options with things like your point of sales. A lot of them are integrated with scheduling tools now. You can get decent metrics to understand, you know, are you hitting your targets? Are you missing? And where should you be focusing? One of the things that we often suggest to clients is looking at labor by categories and departments. A lot of times we'll find that restaurants are lumping wages all together. They call it an expense line, and it just says wages and salaries, benefits, CPP, all of those things are lumped into it. And when you look at that as just a dollar amount, it's really hard to decipher where your opportunities are and where your problems may be. So first and foremost, we always suggest that you start to look at your labor by department, so front of house versus back of house. You start to break out your fixed expense, like if managers are on salary versus the hourly variable labor. This really starts to give you an indication of if there's departments that you need to focus on more than others. You see the percentage on the right-hand side, we also find that calculating the cost of labor as a percentage of your gross sales gives you even more detail and insight on how your performance is trending. The dollar amount can be a struggle unless your sales stay absolutely static. That dollar amount and managing by a dollar up and down can be very challenging. When you start to look at it as a percentage of gross sales, it gives you a better indication of where you sit and how you can start to trim or set targets. Okay, so really simple way to do it. This would be the example of a full month or a period where you've pulled out your full cost of salaries, wages, benefits, and stats, and used it as a total of percentage. You may ask me, why is it 35% and what should my target be? I'm going to say now I can't give you a target labor cost for your business. Every business varies drastically. For many years, we talked about 30% food cost, 30% labor cost. It's not the right way to look at it. And it's very challenging to try and just hit that target. You may find that the front of house labor costs are lower because of your style of business, but your back of house labor costs may be higher because of perhaps production. Maybe you do catering. There's other elements that go into your business and it fluctuates. So really you have to figure out where you are as a business now and where can you trim to, and test where the bottom is and then find a comfortable zone. And we'll talk about ways to test that. When we think about labor responsibility within a restaurant, we think about a few categories that really help manage those costs. The first one being forecast sales, and we'll get into all of these independently. So taking the time to forecast sales outside of a budget, because we all know, like this year, you could throw the budget out window, because if tariffs or different things have impacted you, you may not be anywhere close to where you planned on being in your budget. You need to share your labor plan. So especially if you're the one not writing the schedule, you have managers, you have chefs, someone else writing department schedule, they need to know what your sales plan is and they need to know what your targets are. Building schedules to that plan. So we should never just wash, rinse, repeat a schedule. If sales are going to change week over week, something different is happening next week, the schedule needs to be built to reflect that while still trying to hit our target percentage labor. Okay. And really, once that schedule goes up, that shouldn't be it. We should be looking at that daily labor and sales performance. How are we doing to our plan? Are our sales hitting the mark we thought? Are we overusing, underutilizing labor? Is there opportunities to adjust to have better performance? And taking note on how we may change our sales forecast and how we may change our schedule and plan. And really, those notes and that action plan is what we work towards. So how do we do this? So let's start with building a smarter system and specifically sales forecast. So when we think about sales forecasting, what we really think about is taking the time to look at forecasting your sales accurately. And we do this by using historical data. Historical data meaning what happened last week, what happened in the last 4 to 6 weeks, are there any sales trends? Maybe you've launched a new menu, the guests are loving it, and it's really starting to take off and it's building sales. What did you do last year this time? I'm sure most of you get to somewhere like Labor Day or Thanksgiving, a long weekend, and something typically happens on Good Friday. Maybe the weekend's normally soft, Monday is soft. So you've got that historical information to make decisions on what do you want to plan for your forecast for Thanksgiving or Labor Day weekend this year. So that historical information is really great to have using your point of sale or notes that you've kept to understand. Seasonality, events, and weather can really factor into it. So you might be a patio heavy business. You've got great business in the summer. Maybe it's driven by tourism. Your sales are targeting at a certain level all across the summer, and Labor Day hits and the first week of September, those sales are going to change drastically. That should be part of your sales forecast, and your schedule should be built to match that. Okay. And then align staff with the expected demand. So this is, really understanding what your staffing needs are to hit those sales forecasts, and really understanding where your staffing needs need to come down. Maybe it's seasonality, making changes, but do you have the staff in place to execute the sales? Okay. Moving on from the forecast, which happened week over week, we want to start to communicate these targets very clearly with our team, both for those writing schedules and executing our sales. So typically, if you're posting a schedule on a Thursday this week, my sales forecast next week should really be done by Monday. I'm sharing it with the team who's writing those schedules on Monday. They've now got a few days to work on those schedules and be prepared to review them on Wednesday or Thursday before they go up. So they've really got a sense of what is our plan for next week, and everyone's on the same page. We're going to set labor cost targets by department. So again, you may be comfortable using a dollar amount that you know is going to reflect what the business needs, starting to use those percentage targets to say, here's, I want front of house to be at 9%. I'm comfortable with the back of house being at 15% labor. Giving the team those targets to be able to write schedules to match that. And empower the teams to perform. So giving them a sense that, how do they manage schedule writing to hit those targets, and coming up with ideas on managing that labor across the day of the week. A chef may say, I can't trim labor on Tuesday. We're closed Sunday, Monday. We've got a lot of prep and receiving to do. So, as a team, we know our labor is going to be slightly higher on Monday because there's a lot of work to do to prep for the rest of the week, with the understanding that as the week goes on, that labor in the back house is going to come down because we took the hit on Tuesday. We don't want to take a very big hit, but we want to make sure that we understand that we're managing through the week to still hit that end of week target. Okay. When we think about the next step, it's really around writing smarter schedules. And the first and foremost piece about writing a smart schedule is seeing what the labor cost is to you while you're writing this schedule. What we often find is most people will write a schedule, have no idea how much that labor is going to cost them, post it up and pray that they do okay by the end of the week. The reality is we're using our sales forecasts and we're comparing our hourly labor and seeing it grow and decrease as we make changes to schedules to make good decisions. So if you're using an Excel spreadsheet to write that schedule, you've got a costed Excel sheet. You've got each individual, their wage, and every time you add an hour to their schedule, it shows you the cost of their labor. It shows you the cost of that department as a whole against your projected gross sales. You can make really good, insightful decisions prior to even posting your schedule based on what you think is going to happen. So really great to start the week off knowing what your targets are and adjusting as you go. And if things change, so you've posted your schedule, or maybe even before you've posted the schedule, you've done a review with the manager, you go back and say, no, I need this cost to come down a little more. Where can we trim? Often I suggest looking at, can I trim half an hour here? Can I trim half an hour there? Hours give you some good options to adjust that cost. And you'll see in that costed schedule where those adjustments are impacting your forecasted labor. Tools like 7 Shifts and Push all have the ability for you to also do the same thing. You can still use the communication apps. You can still post digitally to your staff, which we know they love. But they have tools where you can see the exact same metrics as you're working through it. What's this labor costing me as I schedule it? And they actually can integrate with your point of sale to give you live results. And so again, we want to schedule to match our forecast, not hope at the end of the week we're going to turn out okay. Really, the next step of this, once the schedules have gone up, is managing our daily performance. So we actually want to look at tracking our actual labor. This can be really insightful as we work through bettering our labor plan. So if you say, Jenny, I don't know what my percentage target should be for my labor, then we know it's going to be a work in process. And you're going to have to work towards finding your optimal labor. So tracking your actual labor is going to give you some insights on where your opportunities are. So for example, if you are using an Excel spreadsheet and you forecasted your sales and you have a cost of labor, having a column where you can put your actual cost of, your actual sales in and the actual cost of each department, and seeing where you ended up each day and comparing it to your plan and making adjustments. A lot of times we find that, if we post flat in and out times. We post everybody in the kitchen 8 hours, but the reality is, do they need to work 8 hours? Or you find that, work is getting done, and most often they're actually only working 6.5 hours to get their prep and production and service done. Then start scheduling them for 6.5 hours, and make that the new plan that everyone's working towards, and start to see where the opportunities lie to make further adjustments. Making adjustments throughout the week is also a great way to manage that labor. If you've set sales targets for next week and you're pretty confident about them, and then you get through Monday and Tuesday, maybe the weather's changed drastically, something is impacting the business, you've lost an event, something is going to impact you hitting those targets, start to make adjustments to your schedule. Are there days where you suggest or ask, does anyone want the day off? Often we find restaurant staff are happy to take a day off, especially service staff if they know they're not going to make any money. Or someone may be happy to come in later if we don't expect a rush to hit at the same time. So making adjustments across the week is really helpful. And things like patios and seasonality, often we suggest to people that you look and do things like on-call shifts. If the weather isn't going to cooperate, don't just automatically have those people coming in. Create on-call shifts. They call in at the beginning of the day. Yeah, no, it doesn't look like it's going to be a patio day. We don't need you to enjoy your day off. And they often will decide, do they want to try and chase someone else down to pick up a shift, or are they happy to have the day off? Okay. And then use the dashboard. So if you are using a scheduling tool and you have access to, you may want to consider looking at some of the reporting analytics that are available. So some of the dashboards can be far more detailed, and some of them can be just a great snapshot on how we're doing. You'll see with this dashboard, it's from 7 shifts, so it gives you a sense of what were your projected sales versus your actual sales. And if you're up or down compared to what you planned on doing, the hours used, the cost of your labor. This is a great example of someone who hasn't taken the time to really decide what their labor target should be day by day. So they've put in a flat 17% for their back of house labor across every day of the week. And this is where I would challenge them to say, well, it doesn't seem realistic that on a Monday or Tuesday with the lower sales, you're going to hit that number. So again, if 17 is your target across the week, what's a realistic target on Tuesday and Wednesday? And we typically know that we win on Friday and Saturday. But again, being very cautious that we don't let Monday, Tuesday be too high. But really great insights if we look at this. Some of these tools, if they're fully integrated with your point of sale system, they can give you live in the moment information and really let you see what does, kind of each hour of service cost you. Other tools have these. So if you're using Toast and you're using Sling, they have versions of this as well. Go to the sales tab, forecast sales, and see comparative of how you did versus how you planned. And many other tools have access to these. And again, sales and labor tracker in Excel takes a bit of time to build, but you can definitely get this very similar metrics out of them by just a little bit of input of your own at the end of the day or the next day. The last piece of this is really working through weekly adjustments. So review performance weekly. I would, sit down with my management team, talk about days where we hit our labor targets or we missed them, or we hit our sales targets and we missed them, and discuss why. Was there opportunities in staffing levels? Did we miss labor? Maybe we had more junior staff on and they weren't capable of executing the same volume or handling as big of a section. Talk about if sales change. Do you think that's a trend that we're seeing, or trends such as our sales start to come in later or they're coming in earlier? Often we find in the summer months the sun is up a lot later. People usually go out for dinner later. In the winter months, we find when it gets darker earlier, people dine earlier. So you do have to shift kind of where you think those sales are going to land and the start times for staff. So really starting to kind of analyze that and make decisions on how you're scheduling and forecasting, and really make those adjustments to evaluate how you're performing on your schedule. And really, it's week over week adjustments with forecasting and scheduling labor and analyzing that labor. It'll help you find the sweet spot. I often say to people, I went through this experience too many years ago when I worked for Kara, and we really pushed this, and we used hours on our schedules. We took the time to trim so many hours a week. It was a big restaurant, so by the time I was done, we had trimmed hundreds of hours off of our schedule. We got to a kind of a really low point where we recognized we were starting to impact our guest experience. So we had to add some schedule back. We had to add some labor hours back. But by the time it was all said and done, we had good guest experience, we had good efficiency in the business, and we had now been able to execute our weekly schedule with close to 200 less hours than we had originally been scheduling, which is a huge saving every week and a massive saving across the year. So it's a really great practice to tighten up your labor. Beyond sales and management of labor and costs, we then say to you the other way that you're going to work through managing things like cost of good increases, labor cost increases, is really focusing on the performance of your business and, more importantly, the performance of your staff. And when we think about performance of staff, we start to think about good service and good food quality. An improving experience and quality can elevate the number of repeat guests. It can increase spending. We did a survey a number of years ago for a speaking engagement that David was doing. And when we surveyed a group of individuals and asked questions about what drew them to restaurants, what we learned was that 74% of people tried a new restaurant, not because of social media, not because of a review or a coupon they received in the mail, but because someone told them about the restaurant. They had heard that the restaurant was great. And typically when you have a 9 or a 10 out of 10 experience, you tell on average about 10 people about that good dining experience. If you have a bad experience, you typically tell 10 people as well. So it's really important to focus on the experience and ensuring that as things are changing that you can't control, that you are focusing on the things you can control to help maintain or drive your sales. As sales go up, we know that that little incremental cost of labor may not be as impactful. So we say it's the importance of guest experience, and providing 10 out of 10 guest experience is key. And your staff play a huge role in this. So what that means is that you need to focus on staff training strategies. Staff training strategies are not a one-time commitment. They are efforts and time you need to put into ensuring that the staff are constantly engaged in learning new things, but ultimately understanding your product, understanding your concept, and learning how to take care of your guests. We suggest if you write an annual budget, which we would suggest, and or if you're writing your sales forecast and you know you're going to have a training session, training lines are a great thing to separate it out. And what are you willing to spend on training? Put it into the plan and plan to spend on it. And you may say that's more money, and I would say yes, but churn and turnover costs even more money. So constantly having to retrain new staff is far more expensive than training the existing staff you have in place. You can tie training around seasonal events. Are there things happening with feature menus? Are you featuring a beer or wine supplier, and then can you utilize that supplier to come in? And then creating tailored training. And tailored training are opportunities for a team to really get to know certain pieces of the business. You may focus on some fun role playing. Maybe you've changed or you're about to launch the patio for this season, working on the setup and making sure they understand the flow of that space and that they're capable of, selling to a guest, maybe a casual patio versus a more formal dining room. And that you're moving on to giving your staff feedback. Annual reviews and consistent reviews with staff encourages them to keep improving. If you're recognizing that they're working hard and engaging with them on where their opportunities are and encouraging them to learn new skills, often you'll get more out of them. So a couple of just strategies in terms of training. Making staff training more affordable can come in a few ways. Cross-training is a really great way to ensure that staff can help cover the business. So taking the time when appropriate to cross-train certain staff to do different skills allows you to use that staff member in slower periods to cover two roles. I'm sure a lot of businesses would say, yes, I do this. Servers are going to be bartenders on a slow shift. I may use them to bartend and serve tables. Hosts can be runners, or we slowly start to train a dishwasher to help do prep. There's lots of ways to work through managing cross training so that in the future you can utilize people to do multiple roles when required. Pre-shift meetings are a really great way to do ongoing training. So a pre-shift meeting may only be 10 minutes. Letting them know what's happening tonight, how many reservations you have. It's also a really great moment to pick something off the menu, have the kitchen make it, have the staff try it again. Can they sell that to me? What would you pair with it? What wine would you sell? What beer would you sell? Just that ongoing opportunity then for them to keep trying food and getting comfortable selling and romancing it. Same thing if you've got a feature item that's going out for the day. Is chef there, teaching them about it, letting them sample it, giving them some great hints on how they can sell it to a guest. Utilizing suppliers. Suppliers, especially beverage suppliers, love to come in and talk about their product. And they're typically almost always willing to add some extra training, like the basics of wine. So utilizing a supplier to come in and ensure they can talk about the wines that they may be putting on your list, what dishes they'll pair beautifully with, and then asking them to give some insight on the different varietals and how does a server go to a table and make suggestions about wine opposed to just asking the question, what would you like to drink? So utilizing those suppliers, usually free of charge, they're happy to come in and spend some time with your staff. And I often find that if you've got some great products coming in, not making it a mandatory meeting, staff will still show up to try that product and learn more. And then lastly is using tech, and tech can vary on a number of ways that you utilize it. So if you've got a more robust system and some of the scheduling platforms, you can send out documents, you can send out links to videos, you can send out new features and food syllabuses. But tech can also be as simple as if you have a WhatsApp chat in your restaurant, using that to constantly fill information to the team beyond, their schedules. If you need someone to pick up a shift, launching a new menu as an example. If you've got some great information, or giving them a snapshot of that menu well in advance, sending it out for everyone. They've now seen it. They've had access to it. They can start asking questions and give them the chance to learn it well in advance of that menu launching. Once you've got a great team, some of the pieces around keeping them can be challenging. I know seasonality and location can really play a part on keeping staff excited or engaged. Working through your hiring initiatives, how are you attracting staff? Understanding your rates in comparison to the market, doing a little bit of a study of how are other people hiring their staff in terms of attracting them with salary ranges or finding locations to live, etc. Or their training plans. So, encouraging that if a server is coming in or you're hiring a bartender, is their supplier, is their product knowledge that you can guarantee that is going to be given to them. Referral programs are a really great way to get your great staff to encourage people they know to come work for you. Typically, someone who is happy working in your environment would only refer someone that they know is going to be also good in that environment. They're not going to suggest that someone they know that's going to flake out on you is going to be someone they should refer. But what a referral plan can vary, but typically if you refer a friend and you hire them, here's a cash bonus of X dollars. Maybe it's $100 or a gift card. If that person lasts through 90 days, here's another cash bonus for you and them, as a retention plan. And in the back of house, we found that retention bonuses can really work for longevity. If we hire you and you stay a year, we're going to give you X. If we hire you and you stay for 2 years, we're going to give you X plus. And you may say, again, that's a lot of money, but again, keeping those, especially kitchen staff that take longer to train to get them up to skill, especially if you're, from scratch cooking, it's going to be really helpful in ensuring that you have less turnover and training expense, and you've kept a good staff member longer. And then you can look at things like location-based rewards. So we've worked with a few clients that are in a little bit more of a tricky area. Maybe people are relocating, or it's a smaller seasonal environment, and such things as park passes or access to rentals. If you're somewhere where it's a bit more remote, do you have a couple kayaks, or do you have paddle boards, things that you've purchased that now the staff can maybe be loaned and not have to bring their own? Are there gift cards, or I've created maybe discount programs with other local businesses to give them incentive to be in the community and feel like they got some rewards for landing a job with you. Additional strategies for planning for the labor change is really just understanding of the cost of your wage increase. So again, just preparing for, like we talked about, forecasting your labor costs, and ensuring you're prepared for the changes in the cost of your labor to do business. When you start looking at your sales and analyzing your labor costs, like the way we discussed, you really can then start to understand, are there opportunities and days that, maybe you shouldn't be open? And a lot of times people will say, but doesn't it hurt my business? And a lot of times when you start to analyze the cost of your labor, lunches or early weekdays tend to be those days we find that you just don't have enough sales to cover the baseline that you need to open the business. It's not worth it. And you may find that you make those changes, or you can make those changes seasonally to ensure that the profitability is consistent, and not a loss because you've tried to maintain those hours. The other thing that you may find is when you reduce the days that you're open, it actually reduces the staffing load you require. So for example, if you're a 7-day-a-week business, Mondays and Tuesdays are very soft, or Sundays and Mondays are very soft, and you close those 2 days, you now actually have a 5-day-a-week business, which means you don't need multiple managers as often, depending on the revenue size of your business. And the amount of staff you need can be less, because if you're closed Monday and Tuesday and everyone gets those days off automatically, they want a 5-day work week, you've just created that for them. So just some strategies to help manage the overall cost of the business. The last thing that we really recommend that you dig into, to align with all of your costs, as well as planning your labor cost strategy, is understanding your menu costs. So when you start to dig into the business, looking at your menu cost and strategizing menu pricing changes when there's labor cost changes is a really great way to make adjustments. So menu pricing now is a great time to look at what are your margins on your menu, and if you're going to feel the impact of the labor cost increase, can you adjust your menu pricing to help capture some of that cost? If you're not sure how to do that, we do have another webinar available via this QR code, and it can give you some insight on how you look at your menu, how you look at the cost of your sub recipes, your plated recipes, to understand what your pricing strategies can be, and understand if your pricing is aligned to be able to cover the expense of labor as well as other operational expenses. So just another quick QR code there to check out something we've talked about in detail at another time. All right, we've come to the end. So do we have anyone that has any questions that I can answer for them, hopefully?
I'll let you in.
No, you're good. Hello, everyone. We have a Q&A session. So if you have any questions about the presentation Jenny just put forth, feel free to put them in there and I will pose them.
No pressure.
We'll give people a minute. Q&A section right next to where the chat is. But the chat is closed, so you can ask questions in Q&A. If you are having any issues getting access to the Q&A, feel free to raise your hand and I can come and support. So Julie just asked, what will we get copies of the recording? Yes, the recording will go live in a few days. We just need to have it downloaded and then it'll be shared with everybody on the call and anybody who registered. All right, Jenny, if you want to do your closing remarks, I can bring up any questions that come up.
Yeah, so, well, thank you for letting me attend today. It was really...
You are muted, I think.
Oh, I am? I didn't change anything.
Oh, you're good. Sorry, that was on my end.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me today. This was an important topic, and we talk about it all the time with clients. The other thing that I just want to bring your attention to, something that the 15 group has been doing this year, and we've done over 100 of these, are profit workshops. And it's a 2-hour session where you go digitally online with myself, or another member of our team. Typically, we ask you to send some insight on your business, but we're just a great set of fresh eyes to give you some insights on how we may approach things like your labor, your schedules, your menu pricing, or your financial reporting. I've also had people sit with me for an hour, ask me questions about creating marketing strategies and other opportunities for their businesses. So by attending today's webinar, we're giving this to you all for free. So if you use the RANS 2025 code, you can book with us directly through the QR code. It'll populate a schedule and available times to meet with someone on our team. So please, by all means, take advantage of that. We are happy to give people insights on what we see. We're actually, also happy to reinforce if you're doing things really well. Sometimes you just want to validate that, and we're happy to do that, and we're happy to share other resources with you if they come up during our conversation. So check out the free profit maximization workshop.
I have another question. It's from Neil, and it's best guidance for a plan to plan for a 7-day week business with fairly regular sales.
The best plan for a 7-day a week business with regular sales. So I think I heard that correctly. So I think even if you have fairly regular sales, and they're fairly positive and you're happy with that revenue level, I still take the opportunity every week to forecast your sales and look for any nuances in the business. Still digging in and understanding, are things like your peaks of sales and valleys changing. A lot of times we may see people look at their daily sales kind of day over day and say, okay, today's going to be 3,500, tomorrow's going to be 4,200, the next day is going to be the next level. And if you're still struggling to hit your labor costs, then really what you need to do is dig a little farther and say, okay, well, what's our lunch rush really look like? Does it start at 11:45 and end at 12:30? And how many dollars are we doing in that period? And is there a way to schedule or plan differently to bring our costs back in line? And then understanding those shoulder periods and how many people you have on the schedule. A lot of times we find with fairly static businesses and fairly static revenue that they have fairly static schedules where they can make adjustments. So for example, if your business opens at noon and you have a bunch of prep people starting at 8, are they serving your business well? Whereas if they started later in the day, perhaps they could do prep. They can now shift and support online. So you bring in one less line cook, they're cross-trained, they can be on the line. And then as soon as the rush is over and you don't need them anymore, they can go back to prepping across the afternoon. So just looking at how you can adjust people's schedules to utilize them the way you need to use them, but also be able to support where maybe you don't need a line cook for more than an hour and a half, and they can come out of their prep section and be that line cook for an hour and a half, means that you're saving at least an hour and a half if you have to bring someone else in for a minimum of 3 hours. So I would start to dig into kind of those hourly sales, understand where your peaks and values are, and see if you can make adjustments based on that. Any other questions?
That is all we have.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for coming to this webinar on people and profit. Thank you so much to Jenny and 15 Group for presenting and sharing your knowledge. I know I've already taken a couple notes. The webinar, as I mentioned, will be shared online, and everybody here will receive a copy. And we look forward to speaking to you again too soon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great